Graphics, visuals, 3D polygons with 50 million pieces. This is one of the aspects of video games that developers and gamers alike always chased after ever since the fourth dimension of video games. Specifically when Sega released their next-gen console at the time, the Sega Genesis. With Sega essentially insulting the NES, flaunting that their new system can output some arcade-level visuals, even its specs, specifically its CPU, was marketed heavily because it used a 16-bit Motorola 68000, and because of that, they marketed the Genesis as a powerful 16-bit console compared to Nintendo's measly 8-bit NES console. And when the fifth generation of consoles like the PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64, and Sega Saturn blasted onto the scene, it was obvious that the graphical fidelity in games went up by a lot, going from flat 2D pixelated graphics to now being able to render 3D polygons. And ever since then, graphical fidelity in games had only improved more and more, and all of the big-name video companies wanted to flex on each other on how powerful their consoles were, like Sony flaunting the PS3's advanced CPU to the original Xbox's PC-like specs. Even Nintendo at one point flexed with the power of the N64 since they added the 64-bit CPU that they were using onto its name, thus the name, the Nintendo 64. To this day, everyone, not Nintendo, is still chasing these photorealistic graphics, hardware companies like Nvidia and AMD pushing the limit of graphical fidelity in games. Indie game developers now have easy access to game dev tools that lets them add more graphical fidelity onto their games. So, why are there still so many games still using a low-poly PS1 N64-esque art style for their games? Is the aesthetic really that charming, or is it just nostalgia? Now, this isn't the reason, this is solely my opinion and speculation on my part about this topic. I think there's just this hidden beauty and charm when it comes to this art style, and I love how game developers are still using these kinds of graphics because, well, I think they're beautiful. And when I say low poly, I'm not talking about clean low poly, something like Muck or Polybridge. No. I mean low-textured, low-res PS1 and 64 early 2000s, late 90s style low poly. First, let's get into one of the biggest reasons why developers still choose this art style. It's really easy to work with, and I can see why. With this kind of aesthetic and art style, you don't really need to worry about putting in that much detail and, well, everything. Of course, you need details in some places, like your character's silhouette, textures, design, but unlike other games that have higher graphical fidelity, where they need 3 million polygons and 4K textures for their designs or just a single barrel, the PS1 and 64 style's simplicity helps with lessening the workload for the developers, and it makes it more memorable in my opinion. For me, it's just fun to use my imagination to fill in the gaps that the polygons can't render. It's fun to imagine what these characters would look like if they had more than 50 polygons, like Anya from Mouthwashing or Emma from Murder House. With games having realistic visuals, I just find it kinda boring, to be honest. Don't get me wrong, these games can look absolutely beautiful, but with the amount of games striving for realism in their visuals, it kind of just mashes together for me. Speaking of simplicity, I think it's honestly the best aspect of this art style. Now, if you've ever had a lesson in character design, you'd probably learn that simplicity is your best friend when it comes to character design, because it's easier to remember a simpler design than a busy one, and that also applies to this art style. Thanks to the limitation of PS1 and 64 aesthetics, developers are forced to be creative with the character designs with simplicity. Even going back into the 90s, we saw a lot of memorable character designs, from cartoony art styles like Spyro and Crash to much more realistic quote-unquote art styles like Leon Kennedy from Resident Evil 2, Harry Mason from Silent Hill, Solid Snake from Metal Gear Solid. Even now, in modern titles, we have some amazing and memorable character designs like Elster from Signalis, the enemies in Dusk, V1 from Ultra Kill, the crew from Mouthwashing, etc. And it's not just the character designs, even the game world can be a lot more immersive at times than some AAA games today. And you might be wondering, Rory, what the heck are you talking about? How can this be more immersive than that? Now, even going all the way back in the NES era, Some devs really cared about immersing their player in their game, and that still holds true today, with the main difference being that now it's most game developers. I feel like modern AAA devs have just rely on visuals way too much to have the player be immersed in their games, since in my opinion, just having good writing and attention to detail in the environment is really enough to sell immersion. Like the original Half-Life, for example, despite the limitations at the time, Valve was still able to sell its world by having so many interactable items and buttons scattered throughout the game. The NPCs reacting to the stuff you do, your actions actually affecting some aspects of your progression. Another example is Zelda Ocarina of Time. To this day, the game is still praised as being one of the best video games ever, thanks to its amazing storytelling, characters, world building, despite looking like, well, this. Not to mention, combining the PS1 and 64 art style with modern graphical technology just looks so good. Keeping the art style the same, but having more effects on screen, more pretty lighting, and much more advanced gameplay features, I think this style of graphics holds up incredibly well. An example I can give is mouthwashing. Now, if you have seen my video about it, please go watch it after this, please. There are just so many scenes and visuals that are just so breathtaking, and I think that is because of its PS1 and 64-esque art style. And it just doesn't stop at mouthwashing. Signalist with its cosmic, eldritch, fleshy red hue horror, to Ultra Kill's warm lighting and gory explosions, to Sorry We're Closed cyberpunk-esque aesthetic with PS1 and 64-esque graphics. All of these games just goes to show you that you don't always need a game that has to be hyper-realistic to enjoy its visuals. The same way the pixelated or hand-drawn art styles can be beautiful without realistic visuals or without being realistic at all. I really love this aesthetic, and I wish more games would embrace it. I know not everyone likes this kind of aesthetic, but I think it still should be respected, as I really think it shouldn't be compared to games who are going for a much more realistic take on its visuals, since I think they're on a league of their own. So, what have we learned? I think I have bad taste in visuals.